Hey, what's up guys? Stephen H here with another discussion video. And this time I'm just gonna kind of hash off what's been on my mind recently in the world of video games. And it's a lot, so buckle in. Alright, so the first thing is From Software. Of course, all of you guys know by now, I'm a huge From Software fan, and I've been doing a lot of thinking about their Shadows Die Twice teaser trailer that was released earlier this year. For those of you who haven't seen it, I would recommend that before you listen to me talk about it, I would recommend you go and watch it, because if you haven't seen it, then what I'm about to say isn't going to make any sense. Okay, but Shadows Die Twice. People have been trying to figure out what the hell it is. What game they're teasing. And as far as I can see it, there are three things that it could be. First is that it could be Bloodborne 2, or a game taking place in the Bloodborne universe. Second is it could be a Tenchu game. If you don't know what Tenchu is, I will explain that in a bit. And then it could be a Shadow Tower game. Once again, if you don't know what Shadow Tower is, I'll explain that in a bit. But I don't think it's a new IP. And here's why. We know that Hidetaka Miyazaki, the president of From Software, has been wanting to get away from the Dark Souls formula. However, at this moment, FromSoft is in possession of several IPs which have been put on the back burner since the advent of the Dark Souls games. What that means is that they have a whole lot of property, a whole lot of raw material that they can use, and they don't have to spend money on creating more. So I don't think it's a new IP, because it would take a lot more effort to create a new IP, and that's really effort that they don't need to exert, because they have so many existing IPs that they haven't released for in a very long time. Okay, so let's talk about Bloodborne 2 and the possibility that the Shadows Die Twice teaser was in fact teasing Bloodborne 2. I'm getting chills just thinking about it. In an ideal world, this is what it would be. I think everybody who has played Bloodborne or knows generally what Bloodborne is excited at the idea of getting a second Bloodborne game. That would be fantastic, and it would make sense of their inclusion of the character Yamamura in the Old Hunters DLC of Bloodborne. For those of you who don't know, From Software has a habit of including Easter egg characters in games that they make, and these Easter egg characters are inherently out of place in the world that they are in, but they tease at the next game that FromSoft is going to create. For instance, in Dark Souls 2, there was a character who was dressed in a top hat and Victorian garb, very steampunk, and that teased at the release of Bloodborne. Similarly, in Dark Souls 1, there was a character which teased at the release of Dark Souls 2. So there's that. On the other hand, Hidetaka Miyazaki has expressed in no uncertain terms that he is tired of the Souls formula. He's been working on it for, I think it's almost a decade now, and he wants something else. And he's the artistic type that it's very difficult to convince him to do something that he doesn't want to do. Additionally, well, he's the president of From Software, and so if he doesn't want to make a Bloodborne game, he doesn't have to make a Bloodborne game. Anyway, my point is that while the Shadows Die Twice trailer was very dark fantasy, and it had blood in it, it had bones in it, symbols very common in Bloodborne, the fact is that from the horse's own mouth, from the mouth of the man who created the stuff, he has no plans of creating something in that vein. So I think Bloodborne 2 is very unlikely, although I would love to see it. So on Tenchu, I would be super hyped to see a modern Tenchu game. For those of you who don't know what Tenchu is, if you can imagine a cross between Dishonored and Nioh, if you've played those two games. Tenchu has a very stealth-based gameplay, and it also has an emphasis on strategic combat, setting up a battlefield before you actually activate the combat, having multiple ways to approach a situation. It's ninja gameplay, basically. The other thing is that there hasn't been a release for a Tenchu game in well over a decade. The only examples of what a Tenchu game looks like are incredibly old. And so, if Shadows Die Twice is a Tenchu game, then we're going to see significant modifications to the Tenchu formula and what that looks like. And I would say, if this is a Tenchu game, we're going to see something much more along the lines of Nioh, but still with that classic Tenchu stealth, parkour, and, strategic combat and gameplay. So that's very exciting. One thing about the Shadows Die Twice trailer is that if you'll notice in the background, there is Japanese script. The audio has a lot of Japanese percussion instruments, and so whatever franchise or IP this game is for, it's going to be set in the Far East, in Japan. Let's see. Additionally, even the name, Shadows Die Twice, shadows are a very, very prevalent motif in the Tenchu games. Whereas, I've already talked about Bloodborne 2, shadows, and I think there might even be some rain in the background, in the audio, but, shadows and, if there is a little bit of rain, they don't fit in Bloodborne, whereas they do in Tenchu, which is also a dark fantasy franchise, and so the blood and the bones would also fit there. One last note on Tenchu is I would hope and pray to God that it includes multiplayer. The next thing it could be is it could be a Shadow Tower game. Now, I don't really know how I would feel about a Shadow Tower release. I don't really know much about Shadow Tower. What I do know is that, like basically every other IP that FromSoft owns besides Bloodborne and Dark Souls, it's very old and it hasn't seen a release in a very long time. Shadow Tower was a dungeon crawling first-person RPG. By today's standards, it had very basic gameplay, and, there wasn't... it was highly difficult, but there wasn't very much to it as we would consider as modern gamers, So if it's a Shadow Tower game, then it's definitely gonna have an overhaul. It's not going to be Shadow Tower as we would recognize it, but it would still be under the Shadow Tower IP. Hopefully we'll get more information about Shadows Die Twice in June at the E3 2018 conference, but we don't know. So for when FromSoft released their Shadows Die Twice teaser, they said that we would receive more information within the next 12 months, which means basically between now and the end of 2018. So, who knows? Okay, so just some quick other things that have been on my mind. Gen design. For those of you who don't know, Team Ico, the studio that created Shadow of the Colossus, Ico, and The Last Guardian, has been dissolved. And its head, Fumitsu Ueda, has created a new studio called Gen Design. So if you really like games by Fumitsu Ueda, then look for Gen Design, not Team Ico, because Team Ico does not exist anymore. Another one that's been on my mind is Hellpoint. It is supposed to be a if I remember correctly, it's supposed to be a multiplayer Souls-like game set in space that takes place, within the world of the Cthulhu mythos, and Lovecraft and all that. It's supposed to come out Q1 of 2018. The idea sounds cool, but it's a Kickstarter game, and so I'm like, I'm gonna expect it to be trash, because Kickstarter, you can't rely on Kickstarter games. Next is Bethesda. It has been confirmed by the head of Bethesda, whose name I can't remember at the moment, that we will receive more information on Starfield at E3 2018, so be on the lookout for that. If you're a Bethesda fan, this is a big deal. If you're me, this is not a big deal at all. I wish it was, because Bethesda is really good at telling stories, and they're good at making RPGs, but another thing that has been confirmed about Starfield is that it's going to be running off of an updated version of the Creation Engine. For those of you who don't know, the Creation Engine is what they used to build Fallout 4. It was previously known as the Gamebryo engine. It has been what Bethesda has been running their games off of since the dawn of time, and it is trash. It really needs an overhaul, and, so, yeah, I guess you can look forward to another game on the Creation Engine. Yay. Okay, last thing is E3 2018. I've been really, really, really looking forward to E3 2018. I'm really hoping for some updates on the games that I've mentioned. I'm really hoping that Fumitsu Ueda will come out and tell us what he's working on right now, because he has teased that he is in fact working on something, and specifically I would really like to see some more information on Death Stranding. I know that I can't remember his name at the moment, but I know that its head developer is really good, but we haven't seen any gameplay at this point. We don't even really know what the game is about. There's a lot of contradictory or seemingly contradictory information out there as to what the game's going to look like and all that sort of thing. And so I'm hoping that we'll get some distinct confirmation on what Death Stranding is going to be like. But yeah, that's really it. Sorry about the length of this video. I get really excited about From Software, guys. Anyway, I'll see you next time, and y'all take care.